United States, taxes and tariffs. Many people have heard of taxes and tariffs but do not actually know what they are. So I sat down with Jeff Weinberger to see what he thought they were. Define any tax.
I define a tax as a fee on either some asset, property, revenue, money made. That's a tax. I get taxed on this house for owning the house.
As Oxford defines it, a tax is a compulsory contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income and business profits, or added to the cost of some goods, services, and transactions. And how would you define a tariff?
A tariff would be a fee for amount of money paid to import or export goods from one country to another.
Investopedia defines tariffs as a tax imposed by one country on the goods and services imported from another country. The history of U.S. taxes and tariffs. Taxation in the U.S. can first be tracked back to the colonists during the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War, which began in 1775, was a war between the British and the colonists. The British were already in deep debt from the French Indian War and needed revenue. They reorganized their government and, in doing so, levied taxes. Do you think U.S. taxes and tariffs are fair?
Some of them, yes.
And other ones?
Not all of them, because we don't have a say in what we get taxed for.
The first tax imposed by the British in the U.S. was the Revenue Act of 1764, also known as the Sugar Act. This put taxes on all imports into British colonies in North America from other countries. About a year after the Revenue Act came the Stamp Act of 1765, which affected the masses. This act was taxes on all legal and commercial documents, along with newspapers. After the tax was paid, the paper would be stamped. Between this act and the Revenue Act, colonists became quite upset. The Stamp Act was eventually repealed after violent protests. Taxes ultimately led to America's independence. The colonists did not like the taxes placed by the British and rebelled. One example of rebellion was the Boston Tea Party. The colonists were not happy with the taxes on tea, so they stormed ships and dumped out tea. As a response to this protest, King George passed the Coercive Acts. As a response to the Coercive Acts, the colonists created the First Continental Congress. This called for forcible resistance against the British and was one of the first major steps to be taken in the direction of America's independence against Britain. What do you think would happen if the U.S. didn't have taxes and tariffs?
We wouldn't have as nice of a country and get a services that we have.
Do you think the government would fail?
Probably.
After America claimed independence in 1776, John Dickinson began the framework for a government later to become the Articles of Confederation. In this, he wanted the government to have the powers to tax and control Western land. Unfortunately, the committee changed his proposals in fear of a strong national government, so there was no way to collect revenue, and eventually the Articles of Confederation failed. If there was one tax you could remove from your life, what would it be?
I would modify some of the taxes that were put in place years ago around wartime that have never been removed. They were set up for specific purposes, and they just continue on. And what do they go for? I think it's good to pay taxes, but I'd like to know what we do with them.
After the Revolutionary War, the U.S. was on the verge of debt. In order to help reduce this debt, they created the Tariff of 1789. This tariff established a 5% tax on imported goods. And on top of playing a big role in regaining money to pay off debt from the Revolutionary War, this tariff also helped protect the United States manufacturing. This was to help the country rely less on imports. Tensions started to rise between the North and the South because this tariff made manufactured products increasingly expensive for farmers in the South and in a way favored the North. Also during this time period, Thomas Jefferson was elected in the 1800 election and hoped to lower taxes. Next, in 1828, the Tariff of Abominations was passed by Congress. This tariff raised taxes on foreign goods and tried to protect the home industry, but it also made the cost of living in the South increase. This caused there to be a divide in the Jackson administration at the time because John Calhoun, the vice president, was originally from the South, causing him to be upset about the tariff. Calhoun led a charge against the tariff and threatened secession of South Carolina. Eventually, a lower tariff was passed. The Tariff of Abominations overall led to the beginning of states' rights, and at the end of this time period, a new political party who liked high tariffs, the Whigs, was formed, and is still around today. The next tariff in 1922 was the Forney-McCumber Tariff. This helped fuel the U.S. economic boom. It forced many people to buy American-made products because it put high tariffs on foreign products, which made people not want to buy them. In a way, it was economic isolation. And finally, years later, after the Constitution was created, the 16th Amendment was passed. It was passed by Congress on July 2, 1909. This allowed Congress the ability to put and collect taxes on incomes. This is still in place today. Taxes and tariffs today. One current event started in 2016 and still continues today. Philadelphia became one of the first major cities in America to put a tax on soda. The tax was a 1.5-cent charge for every 1 ounce of soda. This was because the city was trying to reduce soda consumption as it was leading to many health problems like diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. The money received from this tax goes towards funding community schools, pre-K, parks, libraries, and recreation centers. City officials found there was a slight but not much of a decrease in soda consumption, even with the tax. In another current event, the U.S. has been making big steps in the trade world, but some recent tariffs have been taking a toll on American businesses. New tariffs have developed lately, but aside from this, all tariffs from the last 3 years have not changed. These new tariffs account for $400 billion worth of U.S. imports, and as the Tax Foundation says, these tariffs are equivalent to one of the largest tax increases in decades. As a whole, the U.S. economy is doing well, but two of the branches are not doing so well: manufacturing and agriculture. This is because recently there has been less global competitiveness, dampened investment, and higher operating costs. As of now, there is no solution to this problem, but one idea suggested fewer tariffs. Overall, historical taxes and tariffs have helped shape America today. From helping the colonists declare independence to knowing what and how much to tax and tariff in today's society, taxes and tariffs are a big part of the United States' past, present, and future.